And we're live, streaming from the footsteps of New York City. We are Music Matters with Jason Tramm. Thank you for joining us for our unique podcast community, where we explore the issues and challenges in the performing arts world as seen through the eyes of distinguished colleagues. Please remember to subscribe to us on YouTube and smash that bell icon for the most up-to-date information on upcoming guests and topics. We love it when you like and share our videos. It helps our community grow. We recently got up to 1,300 subscribers on YouTube, and we're delighted. And we're a growing community, so remember to join the chat in this conversation. And we love it when you ask our questions. It makes the conversation more interesting. Our guests love it when we kind of dig in, so please be sure to check us out there and join us in that chat. We have a wonderful guest today with Miss Eugenia Forteza, who is a dynamic mezzo-soprano soloist on the rise in New York City, originally born in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and she's been in the United States to finish her education since 19 years old. She's fluent in Spanish, French, English, and Italian, and she speaks intermediate German. She has been in tons of videos, has been singing in productions all during the COVID period. She was second place honorable mention for Best Video in Cantina Latino in 2021, and she was also in the highly acclaimed Fedora with Teatro Graticello. She's also a very avid blogger and social media presence for the opera world in 360 of opera, and is an actor also and a model. So welcome to a dynamic and interesting artist. Welcome, Eugenia.
Thank you so much, Jason. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the introduction.
Well, it's a pleasure to finally meet you. I've been seeing your work quite a bit all over social media and interviewing dynamic, luminaries in our field and doing such interesting work. So you're really an artist of your time, and you've been so busy during COVID.
Yeah, I can't complain. It's been a busy time. I think I'm one of those people that I just don't know how to not be busy. So I'm always up to something.
You and I are going to get along. I'm the same way. I've been like that since I was 5 years old. I just love to do different things, and I have a lot of different interests, but it's so interesting to talk to colleagues and to see what other people are doing. And I just love to watch exciting colleagues do and innovators like yourself. You've been involved with the social media aspect for a while, and I think that's become even more important during COVID, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. With social media, it's been something that I've always had I don't know, like an affinity with since I was in high school. I was always kind of the one taking photos and posting. And then I started 360 of Opera in 2016. So it's been a while of being in that world. I worked as a social media manager for some years as well. And with COVID now, everyone's on social media. So I've had the pleasure to give a lot of talks and seminars on the topic as well. So yeah, it's definitely a big part of my life.
Why don't we dig into your musical journey, and let's start at the beginning. Did you always know, growing up in Argentina, that you wanted to be an artist?
Um, no. So I was born in France, and my parents are Argentinian. They were in France for work. They also had ties with my family, with France. And then we moved back to Argentina when I was pretty young. I was 4 years old. So I grew up in Argentina, but I went to the French school in Argentina. So I very much, had this bilingual, bicultural education. But I mostly grew up playing sports. And in a very like academic mindset, like I was a very good student. I did start I started music still like pretty young, but it wasn't necessarily I didn't know I wanted to do it seriously until later in my teens. But I started singing like around 12. And then I attended a musical theater school that's pretty well known in Argentina. So I would say like around my mid-teens, that's when the bug started to like hit me.
Once it starts.
Yeah, I definitely always, had this like obsession with Hollywood and the movies and the stars. I always loved that world. But I don't think I realized I wanted that for myself as well until a little later. You gotta, like come to terms with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what was the atmosphere like? What was it like growing up in both France and then Argentina primarily? What
Yeah.
was the artistic scene like?
So, I mean, Buenos Aires is an amazing, amazing city. Lots of incredible artists, incredible creative people, really good teachers. So I feel really lucky that I to have grown up there, and especially this musical theater school I went to is called Fundación Julio Boca, and it's co-founded by Julio Boca, who's a very, very famous Argentinian ballet, internationally famous Argentinian ballet dancer, and Ricky Pascus, who's was like kind of his colleague, and he brings in the more like he's an expert in musical theater and theater. So they created this school, and I was able to attend at their teenage program, and then I started the adult program before I decided to move to the States. So I think that was very big for me because it cured me from like stage fright. It's a very, they like make you like get up and sing in front of people when you're really young, and you just have to do it. And, going through that at such a young age, it really prepared me, stage wise. Also, we danced a lot, and we learned how to like expand our bodies, and for a girl that was small and everything, it's a big lesson to learn how to, stand on a stage and impose yourself. So for me, that was really big, and I'm very grateful for that experience. I also, as I said, I grew up playing sports, and I always feel like that's such a big part of who I am. And it taught me to be a team player, which is essentially
Well, that's
what
an
you
important role in an opera production, certainly. Right?
exactly.
You're part of a musical production like that.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, that's what I love the most about opera, the rehearsals, the team spirit, like we're all doing something together. So I think a lot of that, even if I wasn't strictly, if opera wasn't in my path since the very beginning, I feel like I did a lot of things that led me to it, and the languages. I mean, I always, between the sports and the musical theater I always loved languages. And my dad traveled a lot for work as I was growing up, which allowed us to travel a lot. And so I always knew I wanted a job that would make me travel, so it's all these little things that added up. And like now I look at it, I'm like, of course, I would like to be an international artist.
So what brought you to the United States?
So when I finished high school, at that point, I was pretty sure, that I wanted to be an artist, but I still very much had in me that, like good student ingrained thing, like, oh, like, yeah, I'll do music. But I also have to like do something more legit or whatever. So I was
Practical, right?
practical, let's call it that way. So I was always very interested in journalism. And I started a degree in literature, but it kind of like starting that, and I was doing the conservatory, the musical theater school, and the university.
Wow.
And it lasted a couple of months. I was like, okay, I think I have to make a choice here.
We all find that sometime. What's that path going to lead?
Yeah, so definitely after a couple of months of that, I was like, okay, I think I need to own it. And if I want to, have a career in music and the arts, I need to really go for it. Now is the time. And at the same time, in parallel to all this, I always had this huge dream of having a college experience in the States, because it was so different to the kind of education I received. Because the French education and combined with the Argentinian education is because my school, even if I was in Argentina, was very French educated. It was a French school in Buenos Aires. So very much at the core of it, like what we were preparing to was, the French diploma and all of this. And I am very grateful for that, because I think it's an education that gives you a very high level of critical thinking that's very useful for life. Every day I'm very
Wonderful.
grateful for this education. But at the same time, arts and sports are not the priority. And this was what I wanted to do. So I always had this dream. And my dad studied, he did a master's at MIT. So I always kind of grew up, and he was coming to the States for work a lot. So I always grew up with this, vision of the American dream a little bit. And because I loved Hollywood and musical theater, a lot of things that were making me look towards the States with admiration, right? So once I finally decided I wanted to, be an artist and go for it, I was like, well, but, what would be the best thing would be to like go for it and combine it with this other dream of like, study in the States. Because in Argentina, want it or not, it's still South America. So even if we have one of the most important opera houses in the world,
at the Cologne
there's
Shore.
yes, the opportunities are limited, and there is, if you want to have a university degree in music and performance, there is one conservatory. Conservatory is still on the old-fashioned side, and it's also attached to the University of Buenos Aires, which it's good because it's free, but at the same time, there's a lot of protests, there's a lot of classes that are canceled. You're still in a system that's very much like public university and not designed with the consistency that a conservatory student needs. So I was there for a little bit, and right away, for me, since I hadn't had a music education since I was very young, you know, for me, it would have been a lot of years in that conservatory to be able to like get, which, and I know like the, music theory and all of that are very important tools, but for where I was and what they were expecting, I wanted to be able to be out there performing sooner than like 10 years,
Sure, get on that circuit, sure.
Yeah, so that's when I started thinking about that, and of course my parents were like, "Well, you're a little young to go to the States by yourself." But I convinced them. They were like, "Well, why don't you wait, like go for your master's." They definitely wanted me to go and have that experience, but they would have preferred if I waited a little bit more. But I convinced them. So around 19, that's where I moved to the States for undergrad. I went to Temple University in Philly. It was an amazing experience for me. It was truly amazing. I think just Philly was a perfect place for me to arrive. I have an aunt and an uncle there too, so it just worked out for everyone.
Perfect. Yeah, Philly's got some great arts. I mean, boy, especially artistic training. There's such great,
Yes.
Great place to learn.
Yes, there's really good teachers, and even if I was at Temple, which is not, one of the two like famous conservatories, because in Philly you have Curtis and AVA. There was a big scene. Opera Philadelphia is an amazing company. We had the orchestra, so there was a lot going on. As a arriving from Buenos Aires, there was a lot going on, and I just like ate it all up.
How was
And
it different
yeah,
than your education back home? What was different about the American system? And
I think in my experience, I felt like it was much more practical. Well, first of all, there's the resources are it's just not comparable. And I was at Temple, which so it's Boyer College of Music within Temple. So it's still a conservatory within a university. So you're still, having the university experience doing general education classes. So for me, it was a really good combination. But it's still Temple is a public university. So it's still not doesn't have the resources that, let's say, like Juilliard would have. But for me, I mean, in comparison, it was insane. Just the resources, the availability, the teachers' availability, the number of students per class. And then curriculum wise, I felt like it was much more practical. You know, the theory and all of that just seemed so much more reachable, you know, for someone like me who hadn't been studying piano since they were two, you know. So I think I felt like there was much more flexibility also depending on your level and your strengths, you know, you could kind of like adapt it a little more to your needs than in the conservatory setting in Argentina. um so I mean, I loved it. I just, yeah. It
What are
was
some things
amazing.
you walked away with as you started into your master's degree?
Yeah, so I was lucky. Definitely, you know, this varies a lot depending on the school that you are. At Temple, we had undergrad and grad opera students. So it was definitely, you know, like a little bit of a fight for the undergrads to get opportunities to sing roles on the opera. But I got lucky, and in my senior year, I got a lot of time on stage. And I also got lucky because I feel like my senior year, there were some changes in the teachers in the opera workshop. And um, our music director, Valerie Rivkin, who
Rest
passed
in peace,
away.
Maestro.
Yeah,
Yes.
yes. It was, you know, he came in, I think it was my senior year. He came in, and also we had Brandon McShaffrey, who was coming from the theater department and choreographer. He was more of a musical theater person. And so I got very lucky my senior year. I got to really work a lot with them in opera workshop, in the operas. And I felt like that year for me was just drastic. The experience I had and the lessons I learned from these people. And I feel like it prepared me very well for the future. Um, and so you know, I felt like I left there with like stage experience, and knowing what I was doing. And you know, and I got lucky then for grad school. Like I had choices to make, which is a good position to be in, but it's still tough. Like it's tough, you know, to make that decision. Like, okay, like now I have choices. Where do I go? And it was a tough decision for me. And I ended up going to New England Conservatory. Um, and it didn't end up working out for me. You know, um, yeah, it just wasn't the right place for me. And it was a tough decision again to decide to transfer. And I got very lucky because I wanted to study with Eduardo Chama, who was at Rutgers University and at Mason Gross. And he really helped me with, you know, the last minute transfer transition. I don't think I would have been able to do that in that way so last minute anywhere else. So I'm also very grateful for that. And that was one of the best decisions of my life. You know, and NEC is a great school, and the program was very, very intense and full, but it wasn't working for me. The voice teacher, I mean, it just wasn't right. And, you know, I really had to be studying with Eduardo. And I'm very grateful I made that decision, because then from then on, my grad experience was amazing. And a lot of the opportunities and connections that have helped me nowadays have come from me being at Mason Gross. And it was a very small program, so I got a lot of stage time, and I was close to New York. So yeah, I got in the tough situations. I feel like I still got very lucky, and I'm very grateful.
When I hear your story, I've had I love to interview colleagues and talk about their paths. Well, and the more I realize how there is no one way to get anywhere, and when I hear your story, which is so unique, it's just great to see how individual each choice, the set of choices is. It's so personal too.
It really is personal, you know, because um, at NEC, on the one hand, I felt like, you know, I liked a lot of the classes that we had. Our acting teacher was excellent. Um, and I feel like I was getting out a lot out of the program, but there was something that wasn't working, and they wouldn't let me change voice teachers, and I knew that I just could foresee that I wasn't going to get out of there with what I wanted, with what I was searching when I decided to go there. And it was tough. It's a tough decision to make, when you're, because want it or not, like it was a dream school for me. It's a very esteemed conservatory. And coming, from Buenos Aires, like I really wanted that shiny name on my resume, right? But sometimes, a lot of times, as artists, we have to really be honest with ourselves and realize that what matters is the long term, and I could tell that I was not gonna get out of there singing well because I just wasn't happy. And that there was somewhere else, where I was gonna feel more at home, and that was just gonna work better for me, because of course, like even with that teacher, I know other people who had great experiences there. So it is, the education side of it is very personal because it depends on how we click with our teachers, and it is very personal. Yeah.
I can tell you, I will give a nice shout out to Rutgers University, Mason Gross School of Music. I did my doctorate there and have such great memories. And, as a current university teacher, I just got my tenure at Seton Hall University. It's really prepared me well for that kind of path. And I made incredible connections in New York and with my colleagues, and it opened my eyes to a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Because when I was, want it or not, there's something about Boston that is because when I was in Philly, I felt very close to New York. I felt very connected to the New York scene. It was very easy to go back and forth. And when I was in Boston, I felt very isolated from New York. It really feels like more of its own local scene. And when I was in New Brunswick and Jersey, I felt even closer than Philly to New York. I could just get on a train and I was there. And thanks to Eduardo, I met Joan Dorneman, and then I ended up doing IVAI for like 5 summers. And through that, I met not only just some of incredible people I've worked with, but just friends. Like some of my closest friends are, from my IVI family, and none of that would have happened if I had stayed in Boston. So yeah, it's funny how things work out.
It's all a web, it's all connections, and you meet all these people, and it's amazing how the web gets smaller and smaller as you proceed in your career. So what was it like going from the master's degree program to the summer programs to all these next up, the young artist type programs, all the things you've done that have bridged the gap between your career?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So one thing, and this might have been just because of my background, and I always knew since day one that school wasn't going to give me everything. That was very clear to me, and I never expected that from school. So I was always, since day one, doing things outside of school. I was auditioning, I was looking for productions, I was doing finding ways to do summer programs. During undergrad, most of the summer programs I did, my work, even at IVAI, my work study was either production, behind the scenes. In undergrad, I worked as an assistant stage manager. So I did a lot of this behind the scenes work that allowed me to be doing summer programs during the summer and meeting people. And I mean, so many people that I know I just met throughout the summers, outside of school too. So that was very clear to me since the beginning that it couldn't be. I behaved like a professional since day one, right? Mindset wise, and with my actions. I just knew for me, there is no such thing as a transition between student and professional, because I think if you're doing that, you're already late. And yeah, so that was very clear to me since day one. So I've been working to be where I will be in 10 years since I move to the States. It's like every day I wake up and I know where I want to be, and I know what I have to do in the small scale to get to the big scale where I want to be. So with that, like while I was in school, I was doing summer programs. I was always thinking ahead. And I think it really paid off in a way, and even if things don't never go like you expect them, but I think that kind of mentality really helped me. I never worked on a transition.
They
I
always
just
say
kind
that life is what happens when you make plans and they change. I agree with that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I had to learn that lesson when I was very young, and I thank my mother for that. And she's probably watching. But to learn to be, I was a very inflexible kid, and I had to learn to be flexible, because then you're the only one who loses if you're not, right? So I carry that with me all the time. And yeah, and you got to make tough decisions, and you got to suck it up sometimes and just go with the flow. Yeah.
So when did you come to New York City, and when did you start to immerse yourself in the musical culture of New York?
Yeah. So I was at Rutgers. I ended up being there between the transfer and opera requirements. I think I was there for 2.5 years, something like that, or like half of a semester. But my last semester, basically, all I had was the opera. So I was in New York all the time, right? And then at some point, I started just like adding numbers, and it's like, all of this money that I'm
A lot
spending
of
on
trains, a lot of
New
trains.
Jersey Transit is
Should buy stock.
expensive. Yeah, it's expensive. So I just started thinking, I was like, I need to move. It's time, because I had been in Philly, in Boston, New Jersey. It's like, it's time to move to New York. So that last semester, we had the opera in February, and then I was basically done. I just had to wait to graduate. So it's like, okay, I'm going to use these months to kind of prepare my transition to New York, which all of the logistics side, I was an international student. So those things are much more complicated than for a regular music student, a regular artist. Like, we, on top of everything, have to really deal with visa logistics, which are very complicated. So at that point, when I was finishing my master's, you get, basically, each time you finish a degree, you can apply for something that's called OPT, optional practical training. But you don't just like get it. You have to have, because it's designed for you to have a year to work and apply what you've learned. And it's the same for no matter what you study, right? But for musicians, it's not like we graduate and we're like just working everywhere and
Get that
singing.
9 to 5 job. Yeah.
Right. So it's a little trickier. So I definitely needed those months to kind of like, okay, find a place in New York, find a job that's going to fulfill my OPT. Because it happens, like maybe you get lucky and like, boom, you get a residency with a company, fills your OPT, perfect. But the chances of that happening are very limited. So what ended up happening is that I got a job at the Juilliard store, which I loved. Shout out to my Juilliard store family. If Gary's watching, he was my boss. We're friends. We text. It was a great experience. And I had to fight for it a little bit, because at Rutgers and Mason Gross, even if it's a conservatory, it's attached to the university. So the International Student Office at universities, it's not people that necessarily are that familiar with how the arts work. In other types of conservatories, they are, so they help you out more. But my advisor, he didn't truly understand. So for him, it was a retail job, which it was not. It's basically a librarian job. Like everyone there had masters in music. You need to know the repertoire and
which edition of Bach you're.
yeah,
Of
I learned
course.
so much working there. So
I go there all the time.
yeah, I had to fight for it, because for him on paper it was a retail job. And I was like, no, it's not. And you're gonna approve this for me, because if not, I don't know what I'm gonna do. So it ended up working out. And that was essentially my official, paperwork job. But at the same time, I was out there, auditioning, gigging, just doing the New York life, which is very random as a freelancer, and just discovering the scene. But I very much like just felt at home like right away, because I already knew a lot of people. And between being in Philly and Jersey, like, I had a feel for New York already. And so I feel like it went like pretty smoothly. And then just the more you're here, the more people you start knowing, the more you realize where the gigs are, what you can do here.
Yeah, there's such a wide variety of jobs, from the church and the temple, religious jobs, to the small opera companies. And I've conducted for most of the small opera companies in New York City, and I've been around the block quite a while. There's so much variety for young singers. And then you've got like all of New Jersey, Connecticut, New York, upstate New York. There's jobs in the whole region.
Yeah, it's really, I think actually it's a great place for, singers that are like fresh out of school and maybe, like didn't get into a young artist program right away, because there are a lot of opportunities to just like perform, perform, and just like getting used to, and maybe, it's not a lot of money, but you're getting opportunities to perform, which at the beginning, it comes to a point where like, yeah, you need to start getting paid more. But at the beginning, where what you need is experience, I think it's a good deal, because a lot of people like end up having to do like paid summer programs and things to have roles in their resumes. And if you're here for a while, like you get a lot of experience. So I'm also very grateful for that, and for all the amazing small independent opera companies that are in New York that are just, they're all like such a labor of love, and I know how hard they work to get funding to make it work. So
I worked for a couple of them. Let's see, I did a La Boheme with Amore Opera. We quadruple cast the show, and I've never done that in my life before. I was music director of New Jersey State Opera, which was a professional company, and I would come into the city and I would work with these wild groups of and I tell you, like at least 4 or 5 of those multitude of cast members have made the Metropolitan Opera. I've hired on the other side in many other projects. It's amazing where you see these young talents come up and you watch them grow, and that's one of my real pleasures in my career is taking really exceptional young talent and watch them grow into mature, seasoned, and then some reclaimed artists. I've given a lot of Metropolitan people their chance to walk on the stage for the first or second time and do major roles, and that's been a real blessing for me.
Absolutely. And it's so necessary, especially with opera, because we need time. We need time.
And you're a mezzo. Mezzos, they're like a fine wine.
Yeah, absolutely. And we need time to mature and try things out. And like, if you're going to sing a major role in a very big company, like it's good to try it out first in a smaller stage. So I think that's a great thing that New York can offer, that, and a lot of these companies are artist run, and it's good. I think there's a very big spirit of collaboration in New York, and artists supporting artists, and there's somehow this belief that like New Yorkers are just like keep to themselves, and they're bad energy, and I don't think it's that at all. It might look like that to tourists or people who come visit, but actually I think there's a lot of solidarity here. It's just that people are busy, so most of the time, like when you're in the street, you're going somewhere. You don't have time to lose.
I'm late.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean, we don't like help each other out at work and things. So yeah, I love New York.
What were some of the formative performing opportunities you got when you were at that next step, growing into what was going to come?
So so once I moved to New York, I pretty much I've sung with all these independent opera companies, like New Camerata Opera, New Amsterdam Opera, Bear Opera. So I got a bunch of chances to do like concerts, small roles, even covers. And through that to meet a lot of people. And it happens to me that between IVI and all of the people I've met through these gigs, that a lot of people think I went to Manus or that I went to school here in New York. And I didn't, but it's because I know all the people who went to school here, and are still here. So I kind of like get put on that boat, which when I think about it, I'm like, that's good. That means I've like integrated, but I didn't actually go to school here. So it's cool. I mean, the more you're here, the more you do, the more people you learn, you meet, and like you said, it's such a small world that then it all starts like connecting in a weird way.
Now, have you always done the acting and the modeling and the blogging? When did that come into your career? When did that come into your idea to innovate in that way?
So the more I think about it, I think I've always been an actor, and I just didn't, for whatever wiring we have in our heads, through like society or like how we grow up, as a very academic like student and all of that. I don't think, I didn't like come to terms with the fact that I'm an actor because I don't think necessarily you choose to be an actor or choose to be a musician. You are, and it's your curse and your blessing, and you just like have to live with it and make the most of it. And I think the more I think about it with acting, I very much think it's something that it has always been with me, but I've only come to terms with it in the past couple of years. I've definitely like been an opera singer longer than officially an actor, but at the same time, my strength was always my acting when I was operaing. So, I mean, I would say I've been doing it like professionally, let's say for like the past couple of years, but I have representation and I love it, and it's a different, it's similar in a lot of things, but it very much has its own technicalities. And now with the pandemic, because I was doing it from before the pandemic, but with the pandemic, I start to see like the blurred lines and how, the opera world and the music world is having to adopt a lot of the things that I had already been living with the acting world, like the self-taping and all of that. And yeah, and then the blogging again, I always had this affinity for journalism. I always like to write, and I always been very curious. And it's when I was little, I always said I wanted to be either, an arts journalist or a sports journalist. It's something that's always
Wow.
been it's something that's always been with me. I would wake up every morning and like read the newspaper with breakfast. It was like a ritual. And I loved magazines. I would read all the magazines. So it's kind of funny, like once I started 360 of opera, I feel like all of that kind of came together, all of my interest. And the more it grows, the more, now with all, I've had a chance to do video interviews and all of that. And I really enjoy it because that's a lot of how I learn too. I learn a lot I'm always looking for inspiration, right? I think that's the artist thing. Like, what are we in search for? We're in search for constant inspiration and to provide inspiration to others. So I love reading about people's lives and hearing about people's lives.
Isn't
So
it fantastic to hear the stories of that everyone
it's
has so unique and
incredible.
personal, and you can learn. Like I tell you, I started doing my podcast because I was supposed to be guest conducting in Vienna and Prague and Italy. And I was supposed to have a really busy summer lined up, and I was supposed to be all over the place. And all of a sudden, it came screeching to a halt. So I was home with my kids. My son does television production. And I'm like, what can we do?
Okay.
Yeah, let's do a podcast, Dad. I'm like, oh, okay. I just kind of said, well, let's make it like we were talking to all the artists I would be talking out on the road. I miss my singer colleagues and my orchestra colleagues and all the people I normally collaborate with. And I've just learned so much from hearing the stories of
Yeah.
people like yourselves. I always learn something when I open up and I get to know other artists.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think when we don't, it also liberates you a lot, I think, because I feel lucky because I feel like through 360 and my job as a social media manager, I was exposed pretty early on to the realities of what a career is, and it does not get easier. And you never make it, all of these concepts that
We're
I
all
think
works in progress, right?
we're all, yeah, and that's why you do this, and it's gonna be like this until your last day, and you're gonna work until you die because we can't not work. And
Have to be creating and exploring and adapting
yes,
and
yes, and all of this was, I was exposed to it very early on, and I'm very grateful for that because it it kind of made me ask myself those questions. It's like, it doesn't get easier. It's never an easy ride. Do you still want to do it? Yes, I have to. I don't care.
haven't we all? I
So,
think everyone's become a philosopher in this COVID era. Everyone's saying, and we have all had to search in why do we do this? Why do we? And I think we've all had to come to terms with well, how do we be creative artists in a time when our principal mode of communication has been taken away from us?
absolutely, absolutely. I don't think I I I think there's a lot of great things that happen with the, of course it's a tragedy on so many levels, but I'm a firm believer that crisis brings progress, and there were a lot of things in the classical music industry that needed to change, and just we needed a little bit of a storm for some things to change and for people to just learn to truly be creative, and that opera or classical music doesn't have to be just one way, and that there's a lot of ways to be creative also, like personally, like as human beings. And I think there's a lot of that happening that's actually doing a big service.
And you've been involved in the vanguard of a lot of these projects. I've been watching and following your work. I've seen you sing. I've never actually seen you live, but I've seen you sing with Teatro Graticello and my dear friend Stefanos, and watching that incredible production of Fedora that you were involved in. And you've been involved in so many of these projects. What's it like being at the vanguard of this kind of intersection between film and opera?
I'm very grateful for all these opportunities, and just the great people and the great teams involved. Um, and I think what's happening now is that a lot of the people I was already working with, a lot of the companies I was already working with, which are filled with incredibly just like creative, innovative people, now are on the spotlight. So, it's not like these people and these ideas came out of nowhere or just came out of COVID. These people were around, and, because of the complicated times and because of a lot of the big companies that have less flexibility and are dealing with like bigger problems in a sense right now, it's given room, and it's given I mean, the digital aspect has given a much bigger audience to a lot of these smaller creative companies from that only had the New York audience before, right? So I think now these kinds of people, these kinds of artists are being put up in the spotlight and are getting attention. So I think it's a great thing in that sense. And of course, I hope all of this is over soon and we can have all of the big theaters back and that we can all continue to do all of this amazing, innovative work and have more of film and the digital aspect involved from now on in the opera world and classical music world. But of course, as well, like go back to the theater. It's two things that need to coexist, and
Yeah, I
will.
don't think I think most people are going to start live streaming their performances even when we get back to because that
Absolutely.
takes away geography and it takes away time. We can watch things asynchronously. I mean, it gives so much more possibility to what's. I think there'll be a lot of. I think everything in society is going to be shaped a little bit by this, and it's going to
Yes.
be like stamped into that as we move forward.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I hope that we can, yeah, take the positive from this, once things get better and not leave it in the COVID era, but really like take everything that we've learned from this time, technology wise, creatively, and also like as people, I think it's given us, like you were saying, all so much time to think and question and I think there's a generalized like empathy that's developed that I think is very important, and I hope we all like take that with us as we move on from this. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this has put everyone in the same boat from the top of the
Yes.
business, and that's what a lot of people have been people at the top of the business I've spoken to, and to watch how we're all in the same boat and how I think it's been incredibly. We've had to come together as a community because people were hurting. I mean, people were legit hurting, and I think we're
Absolutely.
finally turning that page, and we're starting to see the glimmers of light through the door. So
Yeah.
keep on spreading that vaccine, and we'll
Yeah.
get ready to do what we love.
Yes, yes, we're so ready, and at the same time, I think it's incredible just like the how fast everyone's been able to adapt and learn new techniques, new tools, and there's a lot of great things happening right now digitally and things being prepared for the summer outdoors and yeah, I think like if this hadn't happened, like we wouldn't have had to like this like high curve of learning and just like progress technology wise. So that's a good thing. That's a good thing. So let's hope everything else just gets better.
Well, fingers crossed. What can we expect to see from you moving forward with your various projects? What do you have coming up next?
Coming up next. So I just had this past yesterday, I had a bunch of
Yeah, you had quite a
streamings.
busy day yesterday.
Yeah. So one of the projects that aired yesterday was the Vivaldi Gloria with Fairfield County Chorale. There's going to be an encore performance. We don't know yet the date, but stay tuned for that because it was an amazing. This was something that was so, so special. It was a video, choral, everything. It was amazing.
Beautiful.
And there's going to be an encore for that, and then I can't, there's some things that I like just haven't been announced, so I can't share them yet, but I do have things going on this summer. um in August, I have something going on with Teatro Grattacielo. I'm involved with on-site opera too. And then in September, I have a concert with an Argentinian tenor at the Argentinian consulate. Um, we have the same project with Grattacielo, also has performances in November. Then I'm auditioning for a bunch of stuff. So there's stuff coming up that I'm very excited about, and I just can't share yet.
Well, that's very exciting. Well, okay, how can people find out more about you, and where can we go to find these out when they're announced?
Yeah, so you can find me everywhere on social media. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and my handles are Forteza Eugenia for my personal. And then you can also find 360 of opera for my blogging and about the opera world. And then my website is eugeniaforteza.com. And there I always have a calendar. Everything's updated. So you can find out and follow there.
Well, please check out this wonderful artist who's so busy doing such wonderful work. Thank you so much, and we wish you continued success.
Thank you so much, Jason, for having me. This was wonderful. Thank you.
Look forward to working with you down the road.
Yeah.
Subscribe and to like our videos, and as we grow. And thank you so much for joining us. And remember, keep music alive.